Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We have folks joining us from all around the world. This is the second annual SEEK workshop. SEEK is the Sustainable Energy Education and Knowledge Sharing Project. We are an outgrowth of the Spirituality and Sustainability Initiative at Arizona State University, and we have partners from every sector across the nation and really around the world. We're welcoming you today to our workshop on climate action, energy stewardship, and care for creation. And I want to take a few minutes to just explain to you a little bit about the SEEK project and then introduce you to the workshop itself and how the day will go. For many of you, you're probably now familiar with doing most of your work virtually, but for those who are not, we'll explain a little bit about how Zoom works before we head into the sessions. Can we advance the slide, please? So first of all, I just want to mention to you that the SEEK project is online. This is the website URL. If you are interested at any point, please go in and you can learn more about the project. I'm only going to cover some highlights today. Advance the slide. So what is this project? It's a participatory action research project that focuses on the role of social values and mobilizing social networks through cohesive mechanisms, leveraging the power of social resources and assets, sharing, innovation, for attending to some of the problems that are associated with energy transitions, climate action, and maintaining social resilience during a lengthy and ongoing process of problem solving. We have some design principles. We really do focus on the leadership value of values. We work really hard on trying to empower and cultivate cohesive social networks in different sectors and help them work together. We are focused on a combination of practical action as well as the enabling of ideals. We're working across sectors, as I mentioned. We focus very much on educating students while we're working with community partners to build capacity across society. And we try not to reinvent anything. We try really hard to focus on building partnerships where people are already exploring and developing expertise. And then we try to work with each other to advance what we can all do together and achieve more than we can do separately. And we do, as a university, focus on research, and we try to bring to bear our capacities for analysis and education to try to advance all of these joint goals. Can we advance the slide, please? We do get the question sometimes, why are we working with faith communities and why are universities getting involved in this? Because these are two very, very large networks that have a lot of internal capacity, are internally very cohesive, extend across the United States and around the world. In the United States alone, and I'm only using this as an example, we have a global audience with us today. There are more than 400,000 houses of worship in the United States, representing more than 200 different spiritual traditions, touching and engaging more than half of the overall population in the United States, and very mobilized around issues of care for creation, stewardship with energy and the planet, and issues of social well-being and justice. There are more than 5,000 universities and colleges in the United States, which include 19 million students. And there is a lot of focus in all generations on the current crises that we face, a lot of climate concerns and a desire to really be part of solutions. And so we take these combinations of assets and internal mechanisms for communication, coordination, and education, and we try to leverage them with each other to create new possibilities than we may have had in the past. Can we change the slide, please? So we look at this as something of a pyramidal structure, that there's some basic capacity building that we do by sharing knowledge across these sectors and across fields. Not all knowledge is technical, some is social and cultural, but we try to integrate these things, work together to figure out how we can plan and set goals and take action. We also want to make sure that we do this in a way that we can measure and evaluate outcomes so that when we go into this wanting to make a difference, to try to solve problems, that we can tell whether or not we are together making a difference. And a number of the things that we'll be talking about today are going to be examples of that in one way or another. Advanced slide, please. So I talked about meeting people where they are. Now, about 10 years ago, I think it was about 10 years ago, the Yale program started doing public attitude surveys about the climate attitudes and came up with a mechanism and a framework called the Six Americas survey. Initially, there was a division between people that were interested in energy stewardship and those who are concerned about climate change. As of this year, those public surveys show that that distinction has almost evaporated. If you look at this slide, you'll see that the percentage of people responding to the survey that talked about having a concern or being alarmed or feeling cautious about climate change, about global warming, vastly outweighs the people that are feeling dismissive or doubtful. There is a lot of unanimity across all demographics, across countries, that climate change and climate crises are a problem and that we need to do something about them. And energy stewardship is one of the ways of getting there. At the same time, we do have to worry about issues of social resilience, equity, and justice as we move forward. And that's some of what we're going to be talking about today as well. Advanced slide, please. So these pictures are from a recent article from the Guardian newspaper. And it shows some of the things that we're seeing in the news every day, some of the things that are causing people a lot of concern about the nature of the climate crisis. Some of it seems inexplicably related. How can we have droughts, sea level rise, too much water, too little water, exacerbated storms, wildfires? How can all these things happen? How can we have global warming and ice storms? And yet, this is exactly what's happening. These are all conditions that have existed naturally, but they are intensified, they are more common, they are more destructive in this age of global warming. And at the same time, even though there have been great advances in renewable energy and in all kinds of innovations to try to combat this and try to promote resilience, we still have a problem of relying on fossil fuels that are very closely related to global warming. And we still have infrastructures, transportation systems, power systems, the way we live, the way we work, that makes it very difficult to just stop things and reinvent them from the ground up. Can we advance slide, please? At the same time, in the news, you're seeing a lot of good things happening. We are seeing advances in innovations that help to combat and protect cities against sea level rise. Wind and solar are ubiquitous, and they are currently some of the cheapest energy around. And the bottom picture that you see there is one of the weird things about this pandemic that we're living through is there have been a number of natural experiments that pertain to stewardship and climate. One of them is with the fall off in commuting that happened when people started to try to stay home more and introduce social distancing, is that we saw pretty dramatic and fast improvements in air quality. And even though those conditions aren't necessarily going to remain quite that way, it does help us understand that we can make a difference and the difference can be measurable and noticeable. And to some degree, the changes that we've been making in society in order to adapt to the pandemic overlap with some of the same things that we are likely to have to do in order to contend with climate change. Can we advance slide? And just to make the point, this is a very recent analysis. The main thing to notice here is that the light blue bars are all about renewable energy. The darker bars are about more traditional fossil fuel energy. And what you can take away from this slide is that renewables really are very competitive economically with traditional fossil-based fuels, which is a really, really, really good sign. The thing is that even with all these improvements, we aren't necessarily making these changes fast enough to keep up with the pace of climate change and to keep up with the need to adapt and to innovate in order to control for some of the most dangerous effects of climate change. and to promote social resilience and ecological stability in the face of changes that are going on around us to which we have to adapt. Can we advance slide, please? And that brings us to our workshop today. So we'll be talking in a series of breakout sessions and in our plenary about what climate action means, about different ways of approaching energy stewardship, and how to bring our values to the table as we think about how to implement those things, because they are not just about technology and they are not just about science, even though they clearly involve all those. We also need to bring our ethical predispositions to bear. We need to think about our goals about justice. We need to think about our goals and our recognition that people are involved in these, people are making decisions, and the well-being of the people involved in all these adaptations in our stewardship behavior and taking climate action is an integral part of our success in being able to achieve these things. So if we can go to the next slide. Here's a breakout of our program for today. And you should all have a link to the program. So our program is all online at our website. If one of our students could please in the chat put the URL for the final program in case people don't have it available. I encourage you to keep it open during the day and refer to it so that you know what's going on. It's your roadmap through the day. The structure is that we'll have the plenary now and I'll be introducing Doug Bland. And then following that, we'll be heading into our first breakout session. When you registered, you were able to indicate which breakout session you were most interested in, and we've been able to sort you accordingly. So you'll find yourself automatically in either breakout A or breakout B in about an hour. And then we'll come back together for a few minutes, and then we'll break out into the second session. Each of these sessions is structured to be about 45 minutes long between speakers and discussion. And this is not a webinar, so everybody will be live. And you'll have an opportunity to interact in real time. There are a lot of people signed up for this workshop, and we're going to try to make that work. Please observe regular Zoom etiquette. Keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking. Please look at and adapt to what's happening around you. So use a combination of opening your, unmuting yourself or raising your hand. We have moderators and students in every session who'll be watching carefully to make sure that if you've raised your hand in a virtual way, you will have an opportunity to speak. And we're working very hard to make sure that we leave enough room in every session for some good discussion. At the end of every session, and actually during the session, you have an opportunity to sign up for some follow-on activities, which are also at that program site. So it's going to be important that you have that open. And at the very, very end of this entire workshop, one of our speakers who is going to be in the resilience session at the end has offered to lead a mindfulness meditation session, which you are welcome to stick around and participate in. That would be starting right at the top of the hour at noon, our time in Arizona. And with that, I would like to introduce to you our plenary speaker, Doug Bland.